audience raised his hand and stuff. But Sue, you're on here with us on Discord. It's good to see you here.
Yeah. Hey guys. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So thanks. I did get on Discord, and trust me, folks, if I can do it, anybody can. So nice to see your new platform, and kind of an interesting thing. I've been playing a little bit with the Discord today. I see we've got other folks out there on the LinkedIn, and I joined the audio on LinkedIn before. And as Michael said earlier, sorry, Mike, I've got Mike and Mike here, but as Mike Kelleher said, if you have any questions that are score related or questions about the FHFA credit report and score changes, that if Michael's predictions are right about interest rates, we're going to have a tsunami of lower rates and credit score and credit report changes coming in 2025. So could be an interesting time in our market.
I think so.
So, Mike, when in 2025 do you think people will start preparing for? Do you think it'll be like a fast drop, or do you think the market's a little bit rigged and like they don't want obviously all those pools to just be leaking? Everybody falling out at once or recaptures. Do you think it'll trickle down, and then when do you see that? No, I think what I'm trying to get at is then, Sue, when in 2025 will lenders really start, like, is it going to be mandated, or will it be adopted, some of these, to have better strategies to close more market share than others?
This is super interesting to me because if you're in lending right now, and in other words, if you're a loan officer or even a realtor for that matter, or anybody who's in mortgage or real estate, and you're basically living month to month either on credit cards or dwindling your savings because of the current marketplace conditions, or maybe you went from a 700 score down to a 600 score down, or 600 down to a 500. Right now is that time to figure out, hey, you've got 18 months to figure out what are you going to do with your income, your credit. And if you didn't buy yet, you still have that opportunity again to come up in the next year and a half to go, you know what, 18 months really isn't that far away. Let's see what we can do to increase our probability and mitigate against some of the future evils, and eat some beans now so we can have some steak in the future, right? It's the whole, we can do some things now and do some credit issues. Maybe it's debt consol. Maybe pay down some debt. Pay a little bit high interest rate today, so when the interest rates really do fall, you'll have that higher score. Maybe it is as quick as a fix as doing a HELOC to pay down your credit card debt. Maybe it's and I don't know if it's going to be a collections issue. Medical collections aren't reported anymore. But talking to someone like Sue, or getting your company to talk to someone like Sue, where she can give some practical advice on how to get ready for the next refinance boom, or even the next purchase boom. I mean, the only reason we don't have this boom
I don't see a purchase boom. I think you're right. It's going to be a cash out refinance boom, and it's going to be asking Sue what we should be looking at as points that we're trying to stress to them. Do it now before it's too late. And I don't even mean improving credit. Like, there has to be points where, a 30-day late's okay, but not a 60-day late. Like, they're going to need a little bit of a nudge to get off of their 3.3% mortgage. But I think you're seeing it, right, Sue? There's a lot of reasons to get off of it right now. Like, what's the average amount that people owe on their credit card? Because I think most people assume it's like $7,000. I feel like it's much higher.
It's around $7,000. The younger they are, usually the higher the balance. The older they are, the less the balance. So that's kind of the rule of thumb that it is. But what I'm seeing right now is people who are saying, I don't want to buy because of 7.5% interest or what have you. But they're sitting there with a ton of credit card debt and perhaps student loan debt. And they're not thinking about their actual interest rate that they're paying. So even if you're sitting in your 3%, current mortgage, and you've got $200,000 in equity, and you're not going to sell, why are you also sitting there with credit cards maxed out? And like Michael said, kind of sitting there eating beans. You're living to pay someone else interest. And that interest is not tax deductible, which is another thing that blows my mind, right? Because those tax laws changed. and you're sitting there in your home and you don't want to move and you don't want to sell. And quite honestly, the whole idea of if I sell, then I'm going to add inventory. Well, no, you're not, because it's generally a one for one. How many homeowners sell and go to a renter's market? I know, Michael, you talked about that on a few shows ago. It's unusual. So people selling out their 3%, to cash out isn't really doesn't really make sense for a lot of people. But if you're making a car loan and you're paying interest on that, and you've got two or three credit cards at 26, 27, 28, interest rate keeps going up on those, then you need to look at your net interest and look at a cash out refinance. If I were originating today, I did that 20 years ago. Those would be the conversations I would be having is let's talk about what do you want to do over the next 5 years, not tomorrow, not next year, but where do you want to be in the next 5 years financially? And let's take a look at your situation. If you're sitting on a ton of equity, you shouldn't be sitting on a ton of debt as well.
And that is the number one exercise that I think it's like psychologists or scientists or whatever the people that are willing to map out their next 5 years almost always have a more successful next 5 years. It's just a difficult action to do. I was just watching a podcast. There's programs around it, but if you actually had the ability as a loan officer to walk somebody through their next 5 years, and anytime you see a point of pain, you do them a service and dig a little bit deeper. How does that make you feel? What kind of opportunities did you lose because of that? How much do you think that cost you? What did you try to do about it? When that didn't work, what did you try and do about it?
Is that a tough conversation to have with your past client? You help them with their purchase loan or their refinance loan into a 2.5, a 2.7, a 3.2, and then you give them a call back. You come to find out that one of the spouses got laid off, or instead of even differently, it's not a matter of something bad happening to a family. It's one of the members went from high school to college, and they didn't prepare properly for their 529 plan or their kids' school, and their expenses went from whatever, let's say it was $7,000 a month to $12,000 a month because of tuition and rent and books and
That's a lot.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But
And it wasn't even it wasn't even a matter of it was just expenses increasing, and now they're dipping into their savings. So
the answer though is yes. It's a very difficult conversation to have with past clients. It's a very difficult conversation to have with the orthodontist you see every Wednesday at Rotary about how his spouse lost their job. It's very difficult to have somebody do a 5-year plan when you haven't done a 5-year plan in your last 10 years. Why, if you're not even comfortable enough to do it with yourself, how are you going to pick up the phone 75 times a day for 100 straight days and do it when you've been so used to working from home, doing the laundry, getting on your computer, getting somebody from a 4.25 down to a 3.875, going through 6 months later, 3.875 down to 3.25. I would say it's very hard, very awkward.
It is awkward, but quite honestly, that's the gig today. And that's what it's going to be in the future. The loan officer of the future, the successful loan officers, the ones that are going to make it through this market and be successful, are not starting off their conversations with, well, let me go ahead and get your name, address, and social security number. We'll pull your credit. We see where we go. That's done. Those days are over.
How about this one, Sue? Can we do a year review? Like, what's the difference, do you think, between doing a year review of somebody's house situation versus just trying to check in on them and get to the point that they're falling behind and ask about that pain and what their 5-year plan is?
I mean, that's a great point to do. If you close a loan with someone, you should be touching base with them in 6 months, 9 months, a year, because a lot of people, especially first-time home buyers, they don't understand the cost of home ownership. And even with a home warranty, things happen, costs go up, and they start looking at other, financial vehicles. One other thing I wanted to say is we're we're seeing in our industry, because of the right sizing, our own people who are losing their homes, losing their cars, exhausting their credit cards because they cannot find work. And the catch 22 of that is all of those things that are affecting their credit report will affect their ability to get another job in the financial services industry. So I just wanted to make that point. I'm going to have to hop off, guys, but
Wait, Sue, before you hop off, just give
yeah.
yourself a real quick plug for everybody. You speak to lenders. Is that what you're looking for to talk to
So
their audience?
actually, I don't have anything to plug, Mike. It's a
Okay.
crazy thing. I've been in the mortgage credit space for almost 39 years. I have a presence on LinkedIn under Sue Knows a Score. I do not monetize what I'm doing. I'm simply trying to help our industry understand the business that I was fortunate enough to grow up in. Beyond that, I work with Next Mortgage Events as a business development, and I take limited contract work for folks who are maybe looking for a variety of services that I can help with. But I'm not a credit counselor. I don't do credit repair. I'm simply someone who, like I said, who spent nearly 40 years in the mortgage credit space, and I try to share what I know.
One of the facts was 22% of Americans are invisible, meaning they don't have any credit profile.
The
And
Dave Ramsey listener is what you're saying.
the Dave Ramsey listener, yeah. Well,
Dave Ramsey
I think
doesn't believe in debt or anything like that. He believes you should cancel your credit cards. He doesn't even believe in debt. So that's why I say the Dave Ramsey listener. But go ahead.
so. Yes, the Dave Ramsey listener is exactly correct. So, but I just think it's more, low to moderate income areas, etc. And which could be Dave Ramsey listeners. Of that 22%, right? Only
Okay.
1% of 1% will ever buy a home in their lifetime if we don't fix the current system. And it kind of goes back to the main speaker, Dan Burris, who's a futuristic, says the old saying is the activities that you use to get you here, is what got you the results you get. I don't know. Do you know what that saying is? Something like that?
I think I've heard like things that are similar to that. I
forget how
what
it
you
goes.
thought.
If anybody wants to come up to the audience and tell me that saying, it's something like that. But he's basically like the activities you did to get you here not only are going to get you here, but get you less further now with the way technology is. Meaning,
Sure.
you keep doing the same thing. Not only are you going to get the same results, you're going to get the same results, but in half.
Right.
Because that's where technology's going.
Because 70 years ago, a dollar then, if you go look at those things, a gallon of milk was 25 cents, a gallon of milk was 15 cents, and then now it's like $4. But in relative terms for the cost of housing, the same dollar gets you, I think it gets you like 50% less buying power versus 70 years ago. Whereas you might have a little bit more money in dollars and cents, but you have less buying power because of inflation. And so those who have continue to have, will continue to have, and those who have not will continue to have less. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there are ways to manually underwrite them in FHA. You could get bank statements now and show rental payments. You can show utility bills. There's actually guidelines out there. So I think you're going to see or where I'm going to explore is there some problems that become 100-page files. They also talked about how DTI is such another interesting fact is like DTI he feels like will be obsolete at some point. David,
Will be what?
It's just, they analyzed 3,000 loans over the last 6 years for performance.
Okay.
And he found your revenue the revenue going into your checking account if you use Form Free or a bank statement compared to your debt, your outstanding debt, is almost, or I think it was a little bit better of an indicator than credit, or I think 125% better of an indicator of default or not than credit. Or if your revenue is 125% of your debt, somewhere along those lines, it's a better indicator. He said DI is just so Here's 3 reasons why. One, taxes. Like nobody pays with before tax money, so you don't know if they're in Florida, that same person doesn't get taxed, and in Massachusetts they have to pay 7% sales tax. Right? I mean, income tax. Right. Another one is healthcare. Some people pay healthcare. Some people have their job pay health. That's not.
I would say the majority of, most W-2 employees right now are using before tax income to pay for healthcare.
Most people pay healthcare, but the point is not everybody. So it's just the numbers kind of go again. And then
does that mean that
the other one was being married or not? Like, the significant tax implications and benefits. Obviously, if you're married or not, and that's not factored into your gross revenue. So you just said overall, it just was horrible at predicting.
Yeah. Was there ever a question that was asked to the panel? I'm sure those question and answer sessions, but if I was there, I would have asked the question, hey, do you think there's ever going to be a time where if you're a self-employed borrower and you're willing to shell out the $700 for an audited profit and loss statement, right? So if I'm self-employed and I show $90,000 of 1120 income, but my actual gross before expenses, let's say, was 800,000, and my actual expense was 600,000, and then 100,000 of it I use for before tax income to pay for medical insurance, and maybe partial of my, I paid myself rent and electric and cell phone and auto and reimbursement for expense. So maybe my 1040 doesn't show as much. And some of my other expenses were passed through. I just didn't report on a K1. So, is an audited profit and loss where I can sit there and go, this is what I actually earned as a self-employed business person. So I can show that I have the ability to pay my mortgage because of the income that I actually bring in versus the income that shows up on my tax return, so I can reduce my taxable income. Is that
they had somebody from, I think it's a good question. They had somebody from M&T Bank on that same panel, and he said, the loans are going to perform. Like, there's a lot of good loans in the non-QM space, or what you just said, coming up with programs like you just said. It's getting the investors to buy it, and where the people in the car loan world and personal loan world have done well, where mortgage technically has not done as well, is really lay out all of the risk factors that could cause default and how you would handle it. And I think that was his message. It's like, yes, that sounds awesome, this P&L program, and it probably would perform well, and investors should buy it. It's just how do we get better as an industry with the financials? Capital markets people really dig deep into that whole, if you're going to come up with that program, you really need to map out all of the risks so that the regulators feel confident in it and the investors feel confident that the regulators are okay with it. And I think that's where he said sometimes people fall a little, or all the time fall a little bit short. M&T themselves understands it's a good loan, but just is not doing portfolio right now. They said they have one non-QM loan. The rates are high, and there's a lot of guidelines you have to meet to do it. But there is some alternative there.
Now, are you talking about
okay, here's a cool thing. Ready?
Wait. Can we just backtrack just on that same topic? Are we talking about doing like a non-QM loan, or are we talking about doing this, what you're talking about with M&T on the board and on that panel and stuff? Are they talking about adding this to the suite of Fannie Freddie products, or adding this to FHA, Ginnie type of guidelines, or even having VA enter into this for those who are no longer in the military but are self-employed? So is this like an across the board agency type of thing, a paper type of thing, or is this something more related to non-QM? I'm just curious because I didn't know the context of that panel. So did I confuse you, or did you understand the question?
I don't really know what loan I don't know. Are you talking about the one you just came up with?
Yeah, like for the self-employed borrower and for the person that actually can afford to make payments, are they talking about changing Fannie Freddie guidelines for self-employed? That let me simplify that question.
No, not at all.
No? then this is going to be potentially a new Wall Street introduced program that there's going to be an investor for, where self-employed can be
Pretty
entered
sure you
into
just
this.
made it up. I didn't say any loan. All I said was FHA has manual underwrite for the the invisible, and that is one that IMBs have to figure out a way to get good with, or have to figure out a way with all these people losing jobs, right, in operations. Can somebody figure out a way to make it not so laborious with 100 pages and its highlighters and highlighting, that is the FHA play. The other
There's more buybacks at the secondary market level because there's quality control issues, or quote unquote supposedly quality control issues at that level. And there's just a lot of concern of what is actually going on in the mortgage industry. We see mortgage rates when Housing Wire says that they're supposed to be headed up to 8%. What's going on with capital markets? Is there a market to buy, especially with the debt ceiling resolution being changed, with Kevin McCarthy being ousted as a result of the whole thing, and the United States now having to issue more debt with rising interest rates, and because they have to make their interest rate payments, they're going to be negatively amortizing more debt. There's a lot of stuff going on with David, and Michael and I are going to be talking about that today. So before we dig even deeper, we may talk about Redfin, their exit from NAR, and what they're proposing. But Michael, good morning to you. And we're gonna hit the show on the ground running today. We don't have any. I can't. I'm not on LinkedIn right now, so I don't get to see our audience members on LinkedIn. But I get to be here with you on Discord. So let's jump into this. Jobs which were paying between $40 to $60 an hour at one time are now, they're for that same exact position are being offered at $20 to $25 an hour right now. You're used to earning $40 an hour, and now you're being offered a job at $20 an hour because that's the only thing available on your skill set, and you're 50 years old.
It would be tough, but I think that's the whole point of this show, is we're telling it like it is. This is where the way the industry is. You might have to scrap things down. The way you have to look at it is, I think this is, can I optimize it to the point it's profitable? If not, well, I guess it would be more, can I automate it? If not, can I outsource it? If not, I guess first would be, can I eliminate it, right? If not, can I outsource it? If not, can I automate it? If not, can I optimize it? John, you can come back up here on this stage because our Discord was kind of out of whack this week. And so, same thing with Holt. And Holt, you might want to wait because we really only let our callers, quote, call in once. But a great topic to have you back up on stage would be, Michael, what was that seminar you were on? Okay. It's 24 minutes past the hour. This is More Talk with Michael and Michael. The reason we're getting people to Discord is we are looking for sponsors because we're getting help. We're getting Sunday releases on YouTube. This is not becoming an inexpensive piece, but I will say this is now show number, I think, 13, Michael, now 13 straight weeks of showing up and doing it consistently from all different locations. I'll be doing it from Housing Wire Annual this coming Thursday. I did it from Digital Mortgage last Thursday. So that's 4 conferences, that one host has been at while doing it in the 13 weeks. I don't know of any other radio show format. I know there's 8 listeners here. I think consistently we get about 16. If we can get even that number over on Discord, there are plenty of opportunities for even that number, enough sponsors to at least pay for the little bit of chopping this up. And that would make our lives easier. And then we could start to focus on, which our goal is starting in, I think after these conferences, because they could be a little bit of a distraction. But after these conferences, we do have serious plans to start having guests on the show. And I think the guests will be loan officers, realtors, get the people that can report back to us what's important. So we do it every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. I don't think 9's that bad. And this is the problem. We can't invite people on LinkedIn. So we're trying to come up with a way with a newsletter. Discord can send a text. Inviting people every week to a LinkedIn audio is going to turn us from the good guys of the industry to the bad guys. We're going to become the annoying things in your inbox. So we don't want to be those annoying people inviting people, but we have done it 13 times in a row. And I think that's the message to, I think, the industry right now. Sometimes you just got to show up. And oftentimes I'm doing this for myself, Mike, and I'm sure you are too. I got actually, this is the most booked schedule I have had, which is another, for 13 years I've shown up. I think this is a sign that by showing up, people have respected me. I have all CEOs and they tell me, you know how the joke is about trigger leads? Andrew Berman, I know you'll like this one. The MBA annual list is the equivalent of trigger leads for a CEO of a mortgage company. The minute it comes out, every single person is calling. And in this market, the salespeople are hungry, just like the loan officers out there looking for business. There is no business. They are calling, they are messaging, they are texting. The same names are on there. So they're going after the same people. There is a great job of the messages of what these softwares, what these companies do. Kevin goes to conferences. It's the same message. I mean, that's really what Adopt the brand is locating different, just like yourself with the family offices. There's ways to make money with family offices that they should be doing in 2024. And instead, going back to these purchase deals is not necessarily a great idea if there is no listings. So with that said, they go. I guess what I'm saying is the media does a great job. They don't need to really meet, and right now they're not meeting with technology vendors. The CEOs are meeting with their warehouse lines to explain that what's on paper is just on paper, and this is how much money. This is how I envision it, and I could be totally wrong. And I know we're recorded. I think they're going to the conferences with their personal checking account printed out on the inside of their blazer, and they're pulling it out to all their warehouse lines, because that is a domino effect. You talked about domino effect earlier today. As soon as one warehouse line pulls it because of breaking covenants, and they're all out of covenant, because there's never been two non-profitable quarters. If you go back and look at the charts before the beginning of this year, ever really in the space, maybe twice since 1988. So they have covenants. If it ever goes twice, they've pretty much broken it. So to have like 5 in a row, I think they're saying, look, I actually have 80 million in this account. I'm willing to go down to 70, or I'm willing to go down to 40 million. Don't cut us yet. We're obviously not going to lose, 40 this quarter. Let's keep working together, because as soon as they lose one, the other one knows there's also rules around that we should get somebody up explaining it. And then the GSEs even get notified. And everybody's afraid of repurchase risk, right? So it's like if you're, you don't want to have a loan that's a scratch and dent loan that you don't know is scratch and dent yet, sitting on your warehouse line, and then the company folds up shop and you're the one stuck with it. No, we don't say companies. Like, we can't say companies, or no one's going to tell us anything. So that should be our policy. We don't say who it is.
So scratch and dent potentials have there been? He goes, well, I don't talk, and he said this quote, I don't talk to capital markets. I just get these loans that are being pushed back to me. And the things that they are now telling me that I didn't do right underwriting are ridiculous. And I said, well, tell me more about that. And he's just like, well, just stupid things on the way that I underwrite. You would think that common sense would actually come more into play, but they start to nitpick on the things that don't make sense anymore, just so they don't. It looks like that they don't even want to buy the paper. When these are perfectly good underwritten loans, perfectly good underwritten loans, satisfying the seller's guide, underwritten according to the seller's guide, and they're being pushed back as scratch and dent. And then, of course, and with his record and the way he's been in underwriting now for about 20 years, he said that he hasn't, when he pushes it back, he comes up with just a more detailed explanation of why it was, if it was an income calculation, this is how and why this is a make sense deal, and why it won't default. why if it doesn't pass the quality control muster, these are the reasons why it should go through quality control. But not every underwriter, have common sense. Some of them get a little bit loose cannon and they take it personally. So instead of making it a make sense deal, it becomes a personal issue, and that's when and then they become afraid for their job, and so they start under.
Of all mortgages in this country that exist today were originated in the last from 2020 to 2022. And of those, 94% of them have a rate of 2.25 to 5.25.
From 2.25 to 5.2. Okay. Wow.
Okay.
That's crazy.
The result is last quarter, 82% of all refinances were cash out. Only 18% were a rate term.
Of refinances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but refinances are only 18% of the market, 20% of the market right now. The other 80% is purchase business right now, right?
So there you go. So if it makes up 20% of the market and only 6% of those are rate term, right?
Mm-hmm. But when you say cash out, does that include? I don't know if that's HMDA data, but does that include HELOCs that are being taken out too, or is that only first trust deeds?
I would assume that's HELOCs as well.
I don't know. Actually, that would be. Yeah, we need to ask Ralph that question. Actually,
did you know? And I could try and get it from the source that I had it from. But did you know in Texas you can only take one cash out or HELOC for a house for the lifetime of the house?
Texas cash out rule.
That's what's called the Texas cash out rule.
My parents live in Plano, which is a suburb of Dallas. They've never they refinanced their house, I think, once. They did a rate and term, no cash out, less than $2,000 back. In fact, they paid it down when they refinanced. But but I wonder, does that also include HELOCs, or is that only on first trust deeds? That's interesting.
Well, especially with this big boom, right?
Well, I mean, if that is the case, then why isn't that producing more refinances or sales for certain people? I would think that I would turn my property. I would turn like one property into like one investment and one owner occupied, just to reset that one clock if I'm living in Texas with a California mindset. That is right.
I knew you had good ideas, and yeah, that's why people come here. Thinking out of the box finance wise.
Well, yeah, right. Well, you bought your house in Plano in 2004 for like $300,000. It's now worth $800,000. You're sitting here going, "Well, I did my refinance. I took $50,000 of cash out, so I blew my wad there. So what am I going to do? You know what? Let's sell our house for $800,000. We'll buy another property similar. We'll buy the neighbor's house for $800,000, but instead of plunking it all the way down, we'll raise our mortgage payment, but the rents have gone up so high. We're gonna stay in Plano, and we're gonna buy a $400,000 house in Richardson, which is one city over, but still a relatively nice neighborhood. Still middle income, high middle class area, and rent it out. And we'll rent out that place for $3,500. And we'll cash flow on it because we're going to put down a big down payment to make up for our payment here. There's ought to be all kinds of financial toolbox ways to do that. I think that maybe the average mortgage originator just doesn't educate themselves on the financial literacy portion of it. They just look at Mortgage Coach and say, yes, this is how much you're going to save on taxes by this one transaction. It's not really designed to do multi-real estate transactions, at least in my use of Mortgage Coach. It just wasn't useful enough to go, okay, we're going to do this one. This is the cash flow. This is the tax benefit. And in 3 years, this is what we're going to do. Mortgage Coach is actually not designed to be a financial planning tool. It's just designed to be a sales tool. And I think that we're not at the point on a fiscal literacy level to be able to teach the average consumer what it actually means like to be a real debt advisor versus just, I know that the Dave talks a lot about being a debt advisor for life and the mortgages and all that other stuff. And he's definitely on the track of the right direction, but it's not currently designed for actually saying 3 years from now, 5 years from now, buy the next property, cash flow, tax benefit. this is how you're going to do it. Work with your financial advisor because they use Redtail in order to do their CRM and so on and so forth. And it's not, the mortgage software doesn't communicate with the financial advisor software. They haven't developed that yet. And for me, working with financial advisors, it just doesn't have it. And this is all related, of course, to the financial literacy of, I'm going to say it right now, if the first time home buyer really said, I'm not just going to buy one home, but I want to buy multiple houses over the life of my life, then this is how I think I can do it. Instead of, I'm not just concerned about the first house. I'm concerned about like 4 houses from now. I don't think there's enough education on that one because maybe there isn't the aggressiveness on financial literacy to do that. But anyway, I digress.
That was great. I'll fly through some more Housing Wire stuff for you real quick.
Yes, please.
So Cindy Keith, Chief Strategy Officer of NFM Lending, talked about how they've created waterfalls among vendors right now. So like in VOE, they start with the least expensive vendor and then have to waterfall it all the way to the work number if it doesn't hit. And that allows them to save up to $100 a loan. So looking at multiple vendors, and can you write a way to start with the cheapest and go to the most expensive? I found that interesting. Sarah Gonzalez from Panorama Mortgage talks about the importance of having your own captive BPO, which is what I do. One of the things Adopt the Brand does, or very highly involved with OPX, and would love to talk to you guys about that. But like I've talked with her at length. They have their own captive out of Mexico. She could talk about how long it takes. You can't just go down there and do it. But what they're able to do by having that in place, she said, is a significant advantage from a cost perspective and from being able to scale in the future. And Jennifer Hedgepeth, COO of DHI, number one builder right now, just talked about how there are these extremely high numbers for Ron, but they want to get completely digital, like 99%, next year. So that's really what she was working hard on. Then Steve Cooley ran a great one with the marketing directors. Arjun, who has a great at All Western Mortgage, great branding on Instagram, talked about that. Steve Cooley was very funny, talked about KPIs. One of the things that stood out to me was Samantha McKendrick pointed out that she found when they were cold calling, she's a vendor, so when they were cold calling into lenders, only 11% of them knew who the brand was. And by running retargeting Google, Facebook ads against that list, they were able to get it up to 50-60%. So just something to think about. If you can run that in your database in anything you do, and that's what we want to talk with lenders about, just be focused. Like if you're going to be doing realtor classes, when you call on them, you should already have run ads against those emails. Very inexpensive too to do that. Alex Hansen, Chief Marketing Officer at Loan Depot, he just has such a good grasp on what the loan officer is going through, and then how important it is from a marketing perspective to provide that delightful experience, be that brand that people recognize. Talked about the difference between like Nike and a Hyatt, right? Like what the Nike brand is, and he actually talked about the smile in the packages that come from from Amazon.
Sure.
On the boxes that we see all the time.
Yeah.
And he pointed out that he said, I wonder why we got all these smiles, why they send that. And his wife said, because they have everything from A to Z. That's why it's an arrow smile from A to Z. I didn't know that. I thought that was pretty cool. But he had a great presentation on a lot, like what a lot of them said, like was not very, it was loud horns and it was marching and it was somewhat.
Did any of that bleed over into the MBA annual as far as the politics or anything, or were they talking about it in regards to like how was it going to affect trading? I mean, this week we didn't see very much flight to quality into bonds, so not being able to see the flight to quality into bonds. In fact, we saw rates going up. So was there any talk about that affecting mortgages or the viability of mortgages in the next year, or was there any talk about that? I mean, I'm not talking about in the breakout sessions. I'm talking about like people just.
No, I know what you're saying. Politically, it ended there. Like I didn't see it like carry over. People weren't talking about it too much. There was a lot. I mean, it was it was a little gloomy there in the sense that there were a lot of vendors who met with lenders not to do new business but to renegotiate contracts, right?
Okay,
There
so
was
before you get into that part, as far as attendance is concerned for vendors versus actual participants, I know that you and I have talked about, like, in just post COVID, what were the other shows were like. You and I were at a show about a year ago, and it was mostly vendors versus people actually going to the show itself. At the NBA annual this year versus last year, were there actual people going and setting up these side meetings, or were they, doing the meet and greets, and was it more heavily attended by attendees versus vendors versus actual mortgage bankers versus the vendors?
so, as you know, the last couple conferences, I felt I've been a very good mix, and I don't know if I don't think it's more lenders. I just think it's less vendors, right? And not less flags, just less salespeople underneath the flags, like the fringe vendor salesperson, great charming personality that like is on the end of the bench was going at a time, during the height. And now you just see the core people that, like the owners of these companies, a lot of owners. So I did hear, and this is all hearsay, like that we'll let you know on our show, but we do tell it a lot that I think other shows don't have. So that's the value. I did hear the NBA was not particularly thrilled. By the way, again, pure hearsay. Heard it secondhand.
Okay.
No sources. Don't run with this. But I've never heard it before, and I've been to many, many, many conferences of how many maybe it's lenders, maybe it's just people in general, but it was actually a big thing up in Massachusetts at the MBA I've been part of, like just a lot more old school, but never heard at the national level. How many people were not registered that attended and met outside, but just did not go in to the
that
to the
seems
events.
to be like the main objective for a lot of people, not just here at the NBA annual, but at the shows that I've been at too. That the venue they choose, if the bar is big enough, then everyone's at the bar.
Yeah, and you know what? This conference was particularly different for me. Adopt the Brand represents three in particular clients that were there: Silk Title, in meeting with Consumer Direct; OPX America, which is building a global captive as an IMB, by IMBs that want to work together. And finally, SAP, who made the big PR announcement that they are going to try and go up against essentially ICE.
Wow,
and,
really?
Yeah, and use ERP platform to, if anybody has a chance, it really would be them.
Yeah, can you explain ERP in English?
You would ask that. They kept saying it. Does Michael know the acronyms? It is it'll come to me, but what it is their cloud software platform. If anybody's really smart in the audience wants to come up and explain it, but in the cloud, they have built a cloud solution that is built for manufacturing, is really what it is. So across the enterprise, every API within the software allows you to call it so that you can run data or display data in a way that is not very vertically stacked like the current mortgage industry. So when you think of like a chemical plant, right, they're able to display up on screens everything from what is being mixed to what the risk is to what the fire and safety and water sprinkler protocol is, depending on which chemical mix were to occur, go right or wrong. If it goes right on that same screen, you also have inventory of the chemicals, what time the delivery is going to be going
Does
out.
that mean
that's ER? If I did that
Sure,
right, that's
sure.
ERP. Is when you have I have Google in front of me. Go ahead, Mike. I'm going to get it right now.
Okay, you go ahead. So, does that mean
Enterprise resource planning.
right?
So
So does that mean that the process at the wholesale or retail, actually, I should say at the IMB level, the independent mortgage banker, does that mean that the process from origination, if you're a broker, you're submitting the loan, and then it's going to a lender, and then this lender is processing, and they're going pre-QC, from approval to pre-QC to maybe docs to post-QC after the loan funds, or for funding and post-QC. I know there's going to be listeners on the show that don't necessarily understand the loan process. It's not just getting the loan approved, but there's pre-QC, and then there's funding and the recording, of course, for the realtors that's what they stop their transaction at that. But then there's post-QC, which means the viability and the saleability of the mortgage loan into either Wall Street or another investor. And that's the part that realtors don't understand, because sometimes a buyer will come across as, hey, why do I need to provide this extra pay stub? Why do I need to get another appraisal after my loan has closed? That's because of these new rules that are coming across. So does that mean that with these new systems that it's going to eliminate some of the check the checker stuff, meaning that maybe some of the QC, pre-QC or post-QC steps may be eliminated as far as how many touches are going to be there as a result of efficiencies? Or does that mean easier buys and sells on in capital markets by the reduction of certain steps that need to be done? I have no idea what that means, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should know, but I don't.
So in layman's terms, one is a platform allows you to build the unimaginable, make it imaginable. So like when you typically get an LOS, you're really getting a solution in a box where you can customize some screens and write some input forms and make the fields look different or be better, right? But you can't truly develop on the core APIs into screens that you want and be able to produce those screens in days on a sprint. You have to go out and get a resource you basically have to hire a team, or you go out to a Matchbox and you have them design it for you. So immediately you can begin to build consumer journeys and consumer experiences and workbenches for your loan officers, I'll give you an example. Like the obvious to go out there and start a company is there is no facilitation for processors like in the ERP world. And what I mean by that in layman's terms is when you have a CRM as a loan officer, it tells you who to go out. It helps you with tasks on follow-up. I mean, you know all about this, Michael. You've been selling forever. When you think about it, though, processors don't have that, right? Like when they order a VOE, they typically don't have a task management software that tells them when to follow up, and are they following up with the customer or following up with the work number. Right. And then built in that same, do they have a follow-up management system with the customer? Are they writing down the conversations they had with the customer in a way that they can go back the way the salespeople have to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't exist today. So you would either, and in today's market for that, it would to exist, a vendor has to go out and create it. And then they have to be now another cost monthly to tell a lender they're going to be more efficient, and the lender goes, I don't know if you are more efficient. We'd rather use
that's interesting that you say
building
that, Michael.
Versus just to land the plane. Versus in this solution, you would leverage what's already been built on the SAP cloud and the way it's worked with other manufacturing plants, and see if you can start to customize work screens that provide not only that follow-up, but eventually that data, so you said check the checker, can become more traceable down the line for other entities, because that everything from ordering the data to when the data comes back, that becomes an API that can be hit versus a bulk load that maybe needs to be digested or integrated. They gave one study that they found for every euro invested over there,